Welcome to YOPN's Living Well Starts Here. I'm Melissa Livingston, and I'm joined by my fellow host, Esther Labib-Kiyarash.
Hi.
And Chris Sutphin.
Hello there.
We just want to say a quick thank you to the Parkinson's Movement Disorder Alliance for hosting this podcast. Today we're having a couple of conversations about the financial impact that Parkinson's had on people with YOPD. And particularly, because we're a smaller subset of the Parkinson's community, it's really important to get these conversations out there about the particular financial challenges we face and how hard it is to get a care team, how hard it is to get medications paid for. Everything I think becomes more difficult when you're in a subset of people who are still working and trying to thrive and build a future for yourselves. We're still raising kids. The economy is bad. Insurance costs are phenomenally high, and you're just kind of going along the road, and then Parkinson's hits you, and suddenly you're on disability and you're getting paid once a month, or you're still working with Parkinson's, but you are having difficulty doing the same tasks, or you need to retrain for something else, which is incredibly difficult. So all these things kind of hit you differently, but the impact is pretty similar. There's so much to talk about here. Let's get into it. So when I was working, I worked until 2019, and the business that I was working for went out of business. So my journey was kind of a little bit different. And then right after that, as I was searching for a new job and I was applying at all these different places, I was finding that, one, my cognitive issues made me sound so weird that I wasn't getting calls back. And two, it was right before COVID was going to hit. So people started virtual interviews and all sorts of different things that changed the whole process. And when it turned out, when push came to shove, I ended up not ever going back to work. And I just worked for my boyfriend at the time. And even that was difficult. Trying to learn to work on the insurance marketplace and learning everything about the marketplace and having to test to be certified for insurance. I had to take that test 5 times before I passed it. And it wasn't really a hard test. It's just that the questions were so fast and I couldn't click the button fast enough to answer it. And you kind of needed to do one question a second. So it was difficult for me. And I also tried to relearn working for customer service for Apple and couldn't keep up the speed for that either. The small process of learning that was so difficult that they ended up just not keeping me because I kept hanging up on people and because I couldn't figure out how to transfer them. It's been a journey. So I've been not working since 2019, before I even got diagnosed.
The one thing you said about relearning or trying to keep up, I know we were doing, well, thankfully they changed. Initially, when the company I was working for was doing quarterly reviews, right? Which thankfully we convinced management to do those once a year. But my one, they go through and then they, of course, they ask you, what questions, comments do you have? And in the back of my mind, this part of me is always going, am I keeping up? Am I missing anything? And, they assured me, they're like, no, you're doing great. And I don't know if that was just them being nice or, just me actually being competent at my job. So, but yeah, it's been very interesting learning, I guess, transitioning from full-time work position to, I guess, full-time
Retiree.
Right. Well,
House husband.
house husband,
Yeah.
cat dad, medically retired kind of thing. And I don't know, there's some scary stuff out there. Um, and well, I mean, we have to go through and face it and do the best we can,
Sure.
right? And lean on each other for advice, suggestions, or just call and vent periodically
The
throughout the
income
day.
situation is it's difficult, like you go from, like for me being on disability, you go from getting paid every week to getting paid once a month.
Right.
And
How
it's
do you
like,
budget for that?
yeah,
Right.
you don't. It's like a crisis budget, like, and it's constant. Like my money rolls in all through the month, different at different times. So in the beginning of the month, we're flush, but we're really not. So like you have to be very careful. And it's taken me probably like the last 3 or 4 years to kind of create a system that is manageable for me to be able to manage my finances. And part of it is just like paying all my bills like right away,
Yeah.
like right now, and that's it.
Yeah. Because when I worked, gosh, this was my first real IT job was at the local school system, and they paid once a month on the last working day of the month. So, school lets out January,
Ooh,
usually
that's
around
rough.
the 15th to the 20th, somewhere in there, and doesn't go back until usually we went back like the second week of January. But so there's that gap from, well, it usually added 2 to 3 weeks to that January paycheck.
Oh yeah.
And you're sitting, you're like, well, do we buy gifts for people for Christmas? Do
Hmm.
we, do I go get a bunch of 5 gallon gas cans, you know, fill them up with gas while I can now, excuse me, in order to be able to go places at the end of January. And it was maddening because, there's always that little part in the back of your mind that's, like you said, you took your car to the shop today.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, how do you budget for,
You don't.
yeah, I mean,
There's no emergency fund. It's just
it's
everything
it's a it's a
is.
nice idea to have, but yeah.
Yeah, I relate definitely to um, the unexpected expenses and not having the sort of cushion that I expected to at this age. I was working in as a hospital administrator when I started to get what I now know are my first, visible symptoms of Parkinson's. And even though I didn't know what was going on with me, I knew work was and stress related to work was definitely making it worse, whatever it was. And it was actually in a work meeting that I had my first involuntary movement that was visible, which
Oh
was
wow.
extremely scary, but also kind of an eye opener to me that I needed to change some things in my life to reduce my stress. And so I I actually that's when I started my master's degree online because I mean, hey, of course, like I couldn't just like leave a job and not be, having these goals for the future. So I finished my master's while I was in the process of getting diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I switched jobs to what I thought would be a lower stress job, but then found out that, all work is stress. So there really is no such thing as like a low stress job. And when I started levodopa, a big part of what I struggled with was typing and controlling a mouse. I,
Oh yeah.
you know, I started losing files and finding them in like crazy folders that I didn't mean to put them in because of my, crazy tremor hand. And when I started the medication, I thought, wow, this is a miracle. I didn't even feel like I had Parkinson's anymore. I'm like, I'm just going to keep working and this isn't going to slow me down at all. And then I got dyskinesia and I realized that it wasn't it wasn't going to be as smooth a ride as I thought, and I've
Yeah.
been very, very fortunate that I was was able to leave that position and go back to being a stay-at-home mom, but it very much was not of my own choosing. It was very much a choice that I was forced to make because of
Yeah.
the condition and the disease. And so I don't think anybody plans on being on disability or applying for disability. I certainly did not. I am in that process now myself, as I know we all have been.
Fun.
And it is in and of itself a huge stressor.
Yeah, it's a
But
job.
like,
It's a
It
job.
but
is.
yeah,
Yeah. Because,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
absolutely a job.
and it's the communication between, I guess, well, initially I filed for myself. I spoke with an attorney and he went through and, looked over the application I had. He's like, go ahead and submit it. And he's like, there's probably, like he said, like a 30-40% chance that you might get approved first time, which
That's a high
I don't,
percentage.
I was gonna say I don't really know of anyone. I mean, I'm sure there are folks out there. I couldn't name you a person that I know of that applied and got.
I actually do, and
I
that's
know
what's so
one, yeah.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
what's so crazy about it is once I started
Yeah.
talking about this, like how much it varies state to state.
Oh yeah.
As like I have a friend in California who got approved, right away and got additional benefits
Yeah.
actually from living in California that then when she moved to Texas, she lost that,
Oh, wow.
So much of it depends on what state that you live in.
Mhm.
But the research suggests that people with Parkinson's lose an average of $25,000 per year in income. This doesn't even
Easily.
include the retirement contributions that they're no longer making, the employer provided insurance that they've lost. I
Mhm.
mean, I have always pretty much gotten my health insurance through my husband because
Sure.
he usually had better, insurance, but now he's approaching Medicare age. And again, like when I got diagnosed, I went back to get my master's thinking this would be when I really hit my peak and his income would sort of stabilize and I would bridge that gap because I'm younger than him, you know, and that would be what bridged us financially because we have, younger children for our age that we still have to get through high school and college and all that. And, it's led to a lot of really frank discussions in our house about how that's going to look like for not just our own retirement, but for our children's future, and the things that we've had to cut back on to make sure that we have, if at least a little wiggle room. But what does retirement look like when I need him to be employed to get my insurance, So and you mentioned about the healthcare marketplace. I mean, I hopped on there when he switched jobs recently, and it's abysmal. I mean, I don't know who can afford that. He's it's the insurance costs are absolutely insane and go up every freaking year.
Oh yeah. And if you're lucky enough, like Angie found, I'm not going to say it's a good plan, but it was an acceptable plan at the time. I think like the deductibles weren't huge, but there was a large gap between said deductible and out of pocket expenses. And of course, we find out that we go through all that, and all the physicians that I was seeing were now out of network because it's state marketplace, which was, yeah, just a wonderful experience to have to go through as well and cycle through all of that. And then we finally got approved for Virginia Medicaid and basically, had to change all that stuff over again. So
Yeah, the
it's just,
marketplace is there's so many pitfalls in it,
yeah.
and it's so difficult to understand because you get, if you're within a certain income bracket, you get a subsidy. If you're not, then you don't get a subsidy. Like you might get marketplace insurance, or if you're not working, then you might get Medicaid, or you might get Medicare if you're eligible for Medicare and you've been approved for disability for, for 2 years. So there's all these caveats and all these different like things that you don't really know about as a person, like most people don't delve into the insurance information that much. It's like what's covered, what's not covered, and how much do I pay? That's what everybody wants to know. And all these nuances, like you don't think to look at them. Now we do. Now we look at everything with a magnifying glass because we have to find that loophole to get Crexont or Rytari, which I think Billy is now generic or whatever it is. That's
Or physical, how many physical therapy visits?
All Courant. So, but it's and for me, it's always been difficult because that single income was my only income. So as a single parent, it was hard for me to, if there anything went up even just a little bit, that blew my budget. That was the end of it. Mm-hmm. So like you said, there's no cushion, there's no financial cushion, there's nothing. So then what do you do as a single person with one income? Well, you learn how to shop. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I was really surprised the situation that we ended up in because everything goes off your income, right?
Okay.
So, especially, the past few years, because my husband's been working so much, our income was really, really high. And so when I went on Marketplace, I was like looking at the costs and I'm like, well, this isn't that bad. And then I put in our income and then everything got more expensive.
Which is everything up.
And I'm like, wait a second, we don't qualify for any of the reduced rates. So ultimately, we're getting penalized for that. And then now that his income has dropped, then, we just went through tax season. And so, like, now we had to pay the piper for that high income last year, but we don't have the income this year to do that, So and then when it comes to the insurance, I'm like, well, we just have to get the cheapest one, which means the highest deductible, which means really I can't even use it. No. I'm the only one utilizing, any of the healthcare really. And so we never meet our deductible. And I was very, very fortunate. I will say this with Crexont in particular. I'm still working with the trend. I don't know. Honestly, sometimes it's too much, with the condition and with the stress of life. I just say like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah.
Because I had to jump through all these hoops to get the manufacturer's coupon and work with the PBM and, borrow from Peter to pay Paul. And it's a crap feeling to feel like your illness is taking something away from your family like that in a financial way. It's a very, very, sometimes I get really mad at it, but sometimes I just feel like a burden, like this would not be an issue if I did not have this chronic disease, and it's not going away. And my children and my family is going to have to make sacrifices for that. I mean, I'm grateful because I know that there's people, living alone, people, with even less resources than I have. So I'm grateful for that. But the system sucks and we're all paying for it. And it's hard for everyone. I mean, I had to sit down and tell my kids, like, we're not really going anyplace for vacation, this summer. I've started limiting how much I drive because of the price of gas, all of that kind of thing. It's just, and making those choices of like, do I want to stay on NuPro if I'm going to have to pay $1,500 for it? And the answer is no, because that $1,500 is my kids' violin lessons, and I'm not going to make that choice for them.
Yeah.
But I really feel I'm becoming more and more aware as I come out of the fog of like my early diagnosis years, and realize everything is not all about me, that the burden that, not, I don't want to say burden, the pressure that this puts on my husband, and he's always, I married a boomer. I'll love for the boomers. But he grew up and was raised of that generation of, the men are supposed to be the providers. And he's always been so amazing about that. But I had to have a conversation with him at the end of this year about, the fact that what is valuable for me now is not, that's in financial stability as much as the time that he spends with us. And that is, invaluable. And so the sacrifice that he made to work less and be with us because of that priority, I really, really feel like it's harder for him than anything because he sees that, that we've lost that income. And I worry a lot about resentment. And I mean, I could just because I put myself in his shoes and I know how much stress that would be if I was in that position, and he never says it like that or anything, but I do worry about that over time that resentment, is kind of sitting there under the surface, like
Yeah.
um not in a blamey way, but just like it as a human, you know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal to feel like, and it's tied to that whole like feeling like a burden situation where you're just like, there's nothing you can do, and you know that there's nothing that you can do about this. Like, you have to live through it, and they know it. But then, by the same right, you can't help but thinking back, but to think back, like, God, it was so much better when this and that, and I wish that it were different. And I mean, it's hard to push forward and kind of just say, well, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. It's very hard to accept. But then that's really what we're stuck with, is it is what it is, because you really can't do much about the system other than make people aware of the fact that there are breaks in it. I just got I had a very frank conversation with my pharmacist. I have a new pharmacist. He actually took the time to explain to me how to get my medication, how to make sure that all discounts were applied, and how to get it on time, which was wonderful. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, you guys say order your meds 2 days early so that you don't miss them. And then I'm like, but you let me. And he was like, okay, here's how you do it. And he gave me an explanation. So, but most pharmacists, they don't care if you save money. Like, it doesn't matter. So I had to call them last month because they shorted me an entire bottle of pills. And they were like, oh, we owe you a refund from last month then too. And I was like, oh, great, $186. That's a lot of money to be slipping through the cracks. And I never would have known if I hadn't called.
Yeah, I have a favorite pharmacist. And he helps me out so much. But also, I ended up connecting with a really amazing person inside my general neurologist's office who went
Nice.
above and beyond. And it was like we talk about the time and that we spend advocating for ourselves and things like that, and how this being a patient really is like its own full-time job. Because the first person I called at that office was completely not helpful and actually
Yeah.
making things harder for me. But when I did keep calling, and I actually drove over to the office twice, I will do that. I will roll up and I will be like, say it to my face. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah. Because
people
when they
are
look at
like,
you, then
yeah,
they're like,
people,
oh,
As Angie
people,
calls it, you're pulling the Shirley MacLaine.
yeah, exactly. And she reached out to local pharmacies. And actually, I went from mail order to local pharmacy to be able to use a manufacturer's coupon because the PBM had said that they weren't accepting manufacturer's coupons. And actually, it was Rebecca Cordner from PMD Alliance who educated me on how important it is to make sure that the amount that the manufacturer's patient savings program is paying is applied to your deductible. And that was
yeah.
what allowed me to get over halfway towards meeting my $5,000 deductible.
Mhm.
That was a game changer. So, I mean, I just want to clarify that so everybody hears this. And again, it depends on your insurance and blah, 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 blah. But that
Yeah.
being said, when you use a manufacturer's coupon or patient savings program, what they charge, what is billed, and what the manufacturer is paying through that coupon can be applied to your deductible. So
Yes.
for me,
And
it
it should
was
be.
something like $2,200 out of a $5,000 deductible, and
Wow.
then I ended up paying $199 for 30 days of Crexont. That was amazing and just
Yeah.
such a perfect example of how, the simple resources that, and within the community, it unfortunately becomes word of mouth. And
Yes.
people just don't know. And that is, a really, really important thing that I learned.
I didn't realize until, well, this was again one of the stories from the other day. Um, I didn't realize that with the Virginia Medicare insurance I'm on now, um, I can actually use a program for them to drive me to my appointments.
Yeah. They do have medical transportation for. They have that for Medicare as well. Yeah.
Yeah, never even considered it, never thought about it. I mean, I'd seen like I guess the vans, the home to hospital vans or whatnot, circling around. But I mean, it's a 3.5 hour drive for me now.
Yeah.
That's an amazing benefit because I'll tell you, when I actually drove down to my doctor's office to try and figure this out, like I will get so symptomatic.
Me
The
too.
stress of it is the worst thing for my symptoms. I mean, even just being on the phone, arguing with the different
Yeah.
stakeholders about
That's
this,
rough.
it's like my medication, I might as well not have even taken it. And it's not like I rebound as soon as the stress is gone. It wrecks
It,
my whole day.
Yeah.
Sometimes impacts me for more than one day. I mean,
Yes.
and then I can't drive, then
Yeah.
I can't cook, then I can't do the things that I need. And it's like this, that's why a lot of times I do put this stuff off because I know it's going to have this downstream effect of like really impacting how I can even get through not just a day, but the next day.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like you're saying with Esther, you were saying with making the decision about, I guess, one of the meds and violin lessons, right? I mean, it kind of sucks that we have to be put into that position. Like, I mean, we do not have kids, but I understand what you're saying. Like, you want to provide a life for them better than what we we grew up living, kind of thing. And it's it makes me angry, number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And but where do we go? Like who who do we ask? Which manager do we ask to see? To kind of try to resolve some of this stuff.
There isn't one.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
P. He's the manager of everything.
Right.
I connected with an organization last year called Healthwell Foundation, which is they call that a Medicare. They're like a assistance fund for
Yeah.
people with Medicare Part B. And I don't have Medicare, yet.
They're very nice.
I do want to mention though something that again I did learn from you guys, which is if you are approved for disability, you automatically get Medicare within 2 years. So
Yes.
that was something that also I didn't know and I learned from the community, which is a big driver of me applying for disability
Yeah.
because of what we just talked about. But although the Medicare assistance funds don't apply for me, I also learned about Healthwell through PMD Alliance. And I think that that's another kind of thing that people aren't aware, a resource that's out there that people aren't aware of, they are their own not-for-profit. They rely on donations. So first of all, if you can afford if your medication and afford to give, I highly recommend people give to the Medicare Access Funds like Healthwell so that we can kind of pay
Yeah.
it forward for people to get their medication. But also, just the fact that there has to be a charitable organization to help us pay our deductibles and copays in the first
It's
place
crazy.
it just is so frustrating to me. But I'm also, again, just like very grateful that they exist. And I'm constantly trying to tell people, and they're constantly telling me, I had no idea, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is like my problem. This is a frustration, it's like getting the information to the people that need it.
Yeah. I wouldn't have known either. My very first friend that I made online, her name is Debbie, and Debbie was like, there's an assistance fund, and she gave me the number probably like 5 times because I kept losing it. And I didn't end up using it until recently when I was trying to get Embracia, but I would have had no idea, and I cannot unfortunately call Deb anymore because she's passed. So like, that's why we need better resources, because my first friend who told me about the few resources that are here has already passed away, and it's only been 6 years.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And another resource that I'm always happy to go to, not just for the resources but for the community, is the YOPN network community gathering. Almost every time I've joined that monthly gathering, is it the last Tuesday in every month?
Yeah.
I think it's the last Tuesday every month. You can register at yopnnetwork.org.
We learn something every time.
Yeah, I learn something every time. And because on the breakout rooms, almost always people are asking for certain breakout rooms, and there's almost always a breakout room for disability, because that's where I learned what to expect, which is in general that I'm going to get denied the first time, that almost all of us get denied the first time.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like set my expectation. So I'm going into it, more with my eyes wide open. But not only that, I've connected with those people that have gone through that, and now we will message each other or something, and they'll be like, okay, I got my I'm now going to appear before the judge, which is like, I guess where the process kind of dead ends. And
that's the last step. Yeah.
And that's the final boss you got to do.
Yeah. You reach the final boss.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope this conversation shows you that you are not alone in your financial challenges. So many of us in the YOPD community feel these challenges as well. We appreciate our loyal listeners and welcome any new listeners to the podcast. Be sure to like and follow and share it with your friends and family. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can visit the podcast page on Podbean. That link will be included in the show notes and anywhere that you otherwise get your podcasts. There will also be a link to some resources in the show notes if you would like to learn more about these topics or seek help. And a special hello to all of our members listening out there. The YOPN is a free private membership community for all those diagnosed with Parkinson's or Parkinsonism before turning 50, as well as their care partners. If you're interested in finding out more about us and our monthly community gatherings, go to yopnetwork.org. Thanks again to the Parkinson's Movement Disorder Alliance for hosting the podcast. And until next time, this has been Mel, Esther, and Chris, and this is Living Well Starts Here.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the experiences of others in the Parkinson's community or the views of any mentioned or associated organization.